In 1847, London, the Strand, teemed with top-hatted gentlemen, each silk cylinder marking its wearer's station. Inside Carrick & Son's tailoring establishment, mirrors reflected row upon row of beaver felt specimens. Mr. Edmund Carrick adjusted his customer's shoulders, guiding him toward the premium display case. The gentleman's gloved finger traced the hat's impossibly smooth surface, softer than calfskin. "Exquisite," he murmured, lifting the crown to catch gaslight on its lustrous nap. Carrick nodded knowingly. Only the finest hatters achieved such perfection, though he'd noticed their hands shook when delivering new stock. The gentleman's hat order left the tailor's shop, carried by messenger to a workshop 3 streets away, where beaver pelts lay stacked like corpses. Thomas Hartwell wiped grime from his spectacles and surveyed the matted fur, each strand stubbornly separate, refusing to bind into the dense felt his customers demanded. His apprentice dragged a wooden crate across the splintered floor, revealing glass bottles filled with an orange-brown liquid that caught the gaslight like liquid copper. The older hatters called it carroting for the rust-coloured stain it left on the fur, though none questioned why the mixture made their fingernails turn black. Hartwell plunged the first pelt into the solution, watching the individual hairs writhe and contract, suddenly clinging to each other with an almost supernatural grip. The acrid vapour stung his nostrils as the fur transformed. What had been coarse and rebellious now lay smooth and obedient beneath his trembling fingers. The workshop's back door scraped open, revealing a narrow passage to rooms where trade secrets transformed into chemical reality. Here, away from the fur-soaked benches, a chemist named Thomas Corbin hunched over his workbench, glass vials catching the gaslight like trapped stars. His fingers, stained yellow from years of handling acids, steadied a dropper over a porcelain dish. Mercury, quicksilver, the ancients called it, pooled in liquid mirrors, each drop worth more than a labourer's weekly wage. The nitric acid hissed as metal dissolved into solution. Orange fumes spiralled upward, sweet and choking. Corbin's formula promised hatmakers a miracle. Beaver fur that matted like wool, felted smooth as silk. He corked the bottle, unaware that each batch signed death warrants in slow, trembling script. The chemist's orange-brown solution arrived at the factory in glass bottles, each drop worth its weight in silver. Steam billowed from copper vats as hatters climbed narrow stairs to the attic workroom, where summer heat, trapped beneath rafters, turned the air thick as molasses. Bare hands plunged matted fur into the reddish liquid, the mercury nitrate seeping beneath fingernails, staining skin amber. Windows remained shuttered against thieves, sealing in vapours that rose from the steaming vats, coating throats with a peculiar sweetness that tasted of old pennies. 10 hours bent over these cauldrons, breathing air dense with invisible metal, sweat dripping onto fur that would grace gentlemen's heads. The hatter's eyes watered continuously, yet they pressed on, unaware that each breath drew poison deeper into their lungs, their blood, their brains. The same metallic vapours that hung in the workshop air now coursed through William's blood, seeping into nerve endings with each laboured breath. His needle pierced the beaver felt with practised precision until his thumb jerked sideways, unbidden, sending the steel point through fabric and into flesh. Blood welled from the puncture as William gripped his wrist, willing the tremor to cease. Around him, 20 other hatters bent over their workbenches, their movements sharp and efficient, while his own fingers danced a strange involuntary rhythm against the wooden table. He flexed his hand repeatedly, watching the muscles twitch beneath skin stained orange from years of handling treated fur. The shaking subsided momentarily. William retrieved his needle, muttering about the dampness, the long hours, anything but the sweet metallic taste that never left his mouth. William's trembling hands had spread like a plague through every workshop in Danbury. The water pitcher crashed against the floor for the third time that morning, ceramic shards mixing with pools of spilled liquid as another hatter's fingers jerked in wild, puppet-like spasms. The foreman counted 17 men whose hands danced the same grotesque rhythm. They called it the Danbury Shakes, a name whispered in taverns where wives described husbands who couldn't hold their own children. The afflicted hatter's lips moved constantly now, muttering words that dissolved into meaningless sounds. Thomas Brennan pressed himself against the workshop wall, his eyes tracking movement in the empty corners where steam coiled. His co-workers watched him argue with the shadows, fists clenched against invisible enemies while orange-stained fingers twitched and mercury vapours rose from the vats below. William's boots scraped across the threshold of his cramped tenement flat, mercury-stained fingers still trembling from 10 hours bent over steaming vats. His wife, Martha, clutched their youngest daughter's shoulder, pulling the child behind her skirts as his bloodshot eyes swept the room. The ceramic plate exploded against the wall before Martha could speak, porcelain fragments skittering across warped floorboards. William's face twisted, veins bulging at his temples while spittle flew from his lips, cursing phantoms only he could perceive lurking in the corner shadows. His eldest son pressed himself against the far wall, watching his father's fists clench and unclench in rhythm with the tremors. The sweet, metallic taste that clung to William's clothes filled the room, that same orange-brown residue crusting beneath his fingernails like dried blood. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles from the Danbury workshops, London's Regent Street gleamed with gaslight as Thomas Whitmore adjusted his pristine beaver felt top hat before a shop window. The orange-tinted mercury solution that had transformed raw fur into this silken marvel left no trace on its polished surface. He tipped the brim toward Lady Pemberton, watching her silk parasol catch the afternoon sun. The hat's crown bore no evidence of the hands that had shaped it, fingers that jerked and spasmed as they pressed the felt into its elegant form. Whitmore's gloved fingers traced the hat's flawless edge, admiring how the beaver fur lay impossibly smooth, each fibre locked in perfect alignment. Behind him, a haberdasher's apprentice polished another dozen hats, their surfaces gleaming like black mirrors, ready to crown the heads of gentlemen who would never taste metal in their mouths. Behind a mahogany desk in his Danbury medical practice, Dr. Josiah Bartlett pressed his quill against parchment, ink bleeding into the grain as he documented another hatter's peculiar affliction, the trembling hands, the sudden rages, the melancholic stupors. He'd witnessed them all spreading through the hat factories like plague. His leather-bound medical texts offered no answers. Miasmic vapours from the workshop's poor ventilation, he theorized, or perhaps moral weakness brought on by the tedium of labour. He prescribed purgatives of calomel and bloodletting to balance the humours, watching his patients return week after week, their conditions deteriorating. The doctor's tinctures of laudanum barely dulled the hatter's tremors. He observed their gums turning black, their teeth loosening, documenting each symptom in meticulous script. Yet the true poison coursing through their veins remained invisible to 19th century medicine, as elusive as quicksilver itself. Outside the Danbury factories, crowds gathered to gawk at the hatters stumbling home, their bodies jerking in spasmodic dances. Children mimicked their twitching walks while mothers pulled them away, whispering of the mad hatters who'd lost their wits to the devil's own curse. The phrase spread from Connecticut to London's drawing rooms, where gentlemen chuckled over brandy about being mad as a hatter. They stroked their silken beaver felts, unaware that each perfect crown represented months of a craftsman's brain, dissolving in mercury's invisible embrace. In the workshops, young apprentices watched veterans collapse mid-stitch, their faces contorting as they screamed at phantom tormentors. The masters simply dragged them outside and beckoned the next eager boy forward, the orange-stained vats steaming endlessly in the poisoned air.